Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast, as we're now going to be running through some of the top storylines in the NFL Week 5 slate. And I think that the pretty obvious one that jumps off of the page is Stefon Diggs and the Houston Texans facing off against his former team in the Buffalo Bills. And these are two top contending teams in the AFC, so in that of itself is going to be entertaining, but then having this extra dynamic of Diggs versus Josh Allen should be very entertaining to see how this plays out. Now, a lot of people may be cooling on the Bills, and for good reason. I myself dropped them in my power rankings. I had them 2 last week. I think I had them at 6 this week, so they are still one of the top teams in the league, but they have a very clear flaw, at least with all the injuries they're currently dealing with in that linebacking core against the run. And the reality is, I don't think that the Texans can expose that weakness in the same light, where Joe Mixon is going to be out once again, so it's going to be on the passing game, and that obviously involves Stefon Diggs. So I think it's probably going to be two teams. I mean, honestly, as I say it out loud, it's probably not going to be the Josh Allen game. They're very low on weapons. They already are, as things are. Khalil Shakir, their number 1 wide receiver, I believe has been ruled out in this game as well. So it's probably going to be a lot in the arms of James Cook to be able to establish the run. I mean, the Bills are capable enough against defenses that aren't elite, like the Ravens to some degree, to be able to still make their way in the passing game, but feels like if the Bills are going to have a chance in this game, they're going to have to be running the ball, both with James Cook and Josh Allen. I'm sure there are going to be a number of designed runs for him. So this feels like it might honestly be a pretty low-scoring game. We'll see how this one works out, of course. Don't have the crystal ball as a whole. If I could double check though, I am curious what the over-under line in this game does look like, because I do think that this could end up being a low-scoring game. But again, Diggs versus Allen, I'm sure that Diggs is going to get a lot of opportunities, and it's possible that he goes off in this game, because I don't exactly think that, the Bills, they've been playing very well up to this point in that secondary. I would imagine it's going to be a lot of his former teammate in Christian Benford versus Stefon Diggs in this situation, but going to be a lot of fun to watch in my opinion. But additionally here, we have another pretty interesting storyline of the Washington Commanders, who really have been one of the revelations of the past couple weeks in the NFL, thanks to Jaden Daniels and this offense elevating to a new level. But how sustainable is that? Because the 2 games that they've played and really exploded offensively have been against the Cincinnati Bengals defense and against the Arizona Cardinals defense. And neither one of those teams have really shown that they can stop anybody up to this point. So now you come into a situation against the Browns where maybe the Browns aren't quite as elite as they were last season from a defensive perspective. But even still, I mean, that is still a talented defense. And I think that they can put some pressure on Jaden Daniels. He isn't just going to be able to run around free. This is a situation where they have defensive players such as a Denzel Ward to maybe be able to take Terry McLaurin off of his game. And Jaden Daniels has done a good job these past couple weeks of spreading out the ball. But I also don't think that they have faced a corner, assuming that Ward is playing in this game. I actually haven't looked at the Browns injury report just yet, but I think it is very possible that we see a little bit of, rookie showings from Jaden Daniels in this game in particular. Obviously, I think everybody in the NFL, unless you're an NFC East fan, is rooting for Jaden Daniels, and I am as well. But I think that this is going to be a real test for that Commanders offense and should be a very interesting one to watch play out. I just mentioned the Cardinals, who have not really shown that they can stop anybody defensively. can they be competitive? Can they match up against some of the top teams in the NFL? And they had some close games against the Bills in week 1. In week 3 against the Lions, they played them pretty tough, all things considered. But after getting blown out by the Commanders last week, they now sit at 1-3, and neither one of the sides of the ball have looked all that inspiring. Especially, I think the offense itself is a situation where you were really hoping that they could, take some steps forward now that Kyler Murray is healthy, and we're really yet to see them play a full game of great offensive football. They are 4 for 4 on scoring touchdowns on their opening drive, and outside of that, we have seen some pretty steep drop-offs from there. So that is a situation where now they come in against San Francisco. They are 7-point underdogs. I believe earlier, as I was doing show prep, it was at 7.5, so it's actually moved half a point in their favor over the past couple hours here. So I just feel like this is a situation where the Cardinals, they're playing a team that is better than them in the San Francisco 49ers. But that being said, this is a divisional game, and you kind of have to at least show some sort of hope, because falling to 1-4, coming off of back-to-back blowout losses, would be very concerning, especially considering the fact that, it's against the 49ers. You never really were anticipating them to compete with the Niners for the division, but the Seattle Seahawks, who have a favorable matchup this weekend as well against the Giants, you're talking about the Seahawks 4-1 to the Cardinals 1-4. That's just a hole that the Cardinals cannot really afford to put themselves in if they want to be a playoff hopeful. And you can at least still come out of this game with a little bit of optimism as long as they put up a fight in this one. But based off of what we saw last week, I wouldn't exactly have super high hopes on it. But then again, I was a Cardinals believer coming into this season. This would be a huge situation for them to step up. And then I want to talk about some coaches in particular that have a little bit of defining moments for them right now. There's probably 3 teams that you could point to, and 2 of them might be playing in the same game. First off, I want to talk about Antonio Pierce in a situation where obviously so much noise around the Raiders these past couple weeks, talking about the business decisions quote and rant that he had a couple weeks ago. Now, coming into this week, you have Davante Adams requesting a trade, and it sounds like he and Antonio Pierce aren't really on the same page. You have Jack Jones. I don't know. I read the quotes. I didn't hear him himself, so I don't want to back myself into this corner. But Jack Jones, one of the Raiders' top defensive backs, sort of sounded, again, based off the quotes alone, a little bit dismissive of Antonio Pierce. And, I'm not sure if it feels like Pierce has the locker room in the same way that he did as we were coming out of last season and the run they went on there. This is a winnable game for them against the Broncos. Now, on the road, sure, not an easy game by any means. I think it should be a maybe gritty one is the way I would put it. I'd say fun. I think it's going to be competitive, and I think it's going to be gritty. So that's kind of the recipe as well that Antonio Pierce would probably like to play a lot of these games. So I think for his sake, and also the fact, and I don't think it's all that important, but he did just get slapped with a bunch of recruiting violations from his time at Arizona State. So again, just a lot of Antonio Pierce in headlines as of lately, none of them overly positive. So this is going to be a situation for him where I think we're going to see, based off of sort of the commitment level from his team, as to whether or not he still has the locker room. And then really the number 2 coach on this list here is Gerard Mayo. We're going to be diving into the Patriots specific situation in a little bit here, but Gerard Mayo, in this situation where they are just 4 games into the season, expectations were low coming into the year anyways, so it's not like he's failing to live up to expectations. They got off to a good start, upset win over the Bengals, forcing an overtime against the Seahawks that started nice, and since then it has been extremely messy. The Thursday night football blowout against the Jets, and then getting blown out last week against the 49ers, both teams that came in with much higher expectations than the Patriots. But that being said, you look at last night and Kirk Cousins had more passing yards and 509 than the Patriots have on the season as a whole. That's a brutal stat. Jacoby Brissett hasn't been good. It sounds like there is some impatience right now about the Drake May situation there. And as a Patriots fan myself, I would prefer to see Drake May sit on the bench because that offensive line is a disaster. We just saw David Andrews have season end. The news that he's going to be out for the season. One of their offensive tackles that started against the Jets in Caden Wallace, he was just played on injured reserve. So they are a mess as a whole. Mayo needs to find a way to sort of weather this storm. This is a game playing against the Dolphins that are also injury riddled, specifically at the quarterback position. But the Dolphins have looked like one of the worst teams in the NFL since Tua went down. And this is a game at home that feels like Mayo kind of really needs to at least get a little bit more on the right page. But again, we're going to be diving more so into that Patriots-specific situation in just a few moments here. But on the Dolphins side of it as well, I guess I would say that Mike McDaniel has some real pressure surrounding him at this point. The offensive guru that I know I myself have said that I think a number of different quarterbacks could thrive in that Miami system. And I think as an NFL community as a whole, we did underappreciate a little bit the value that Tua brought to the offense. Now, I don't think that they had... I thought it was a mistake as the organization as a whole. I don't know how much of that falls on McDaniel versus the general manager as well, but not having a backup option for Tua, considering the fact that he has this concussion history, considering the fact that you're in the same division as the Jets, who just last year, saw this injury to Aaron Rodgers, and they had no backup plan, and they sort of spiraled from there. Feels like the Dolphins should have been a little bit more proactive on that front. We'll see. This is maybe a little bit of a make-or-break game for Tyler Huntley if he can continue to play quarterback for this Dolphins team, at least until Tua returns, which is still a big time to be determined. I think Mike McDaniel survives this year no matter what. He just got a contract extension. I don't think that Tua getting injured necessarily falls on his shoulders, but, there were people coming into this season that had a little bit of doubts of McDaniel. I thought it was unfair. I still do, because of the fact that, he sort of took this Dolphins offense to an entirely different level, and now he just doesn't really have the guy at the helm of this to operate. But again, I think that there are doubts creeping in, and especially the fact that he's been so adamant that they're okay with what they have. Well, let's see it. Patriots have been a very bad team up to this point in the season. This is a game as well. Both of these teams, it's going to be a little bit of an indictment, probably, unless it ends up being a shootout that the Patriots win, which I would be absolutely shocked if that were the case. The over-under in this game is 36.5, so... I highly doubt that is the case, that Mike McDaniel needs to start to piece this offense together a little bit more, and the Patriots just need to settle down because very messy behind the scenes right now. And we are going to touch more on that story, but before we do so, we are going to be running through the best 5 bets of the weekend. Every week, I pick 5 games against the spread. We're doing pretty well up to this point, so we are going to be diving into that. But before we do so, we are going to take a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.